So this will be recorded and it may be public. So if you want to be invisible to the public, like if I put it on YouTube, go ahead and change your name and what's the word for getting your screen and just not have your screen on. Turn your screen.
Dark.
What's it called? What's the word?
Dark.
Dark. Go dark. There will be opportunity for interaction, but what I'm planning right now is to talk a little bit and then to ask, any questions, any comments, that sort of thing. And then I might do an exercise with the group and have sharing about the exercise. It'll be an exercise from this new book that I just came out with. I wrote it during COVID. It's called From Triggered to Tranquil. And Karen has it too. Some people have it. It's the subtitle, long subtitle, but I'm going to read it to you. How self-compassion and mindful presence can transform relationship conflicts and heal childhood wounds. So that's a mouthful. It promises a lot. So I'm going to say something about why I wrote this book first. Some of you know that John Gray and I wrote this other book about triggers, and it was called 5-Minute Relationship Repair. And that's a great book. It's very thorough, particularly around how to repair and work with relationship ruptures in any kind of dyad situation, but particularly intimate couples. And it talks a lot about the brain science behind why we get triggered and how in the amygdala area of the brain, there's this survival alarm system that basically primes us humans to often when there's any lack of safety kind of feeling, any threat in the field, it primes us humans to act first and think second. And that's not such a good thing in most of our interpersonal relationships, because sometimes the action comes from fear motivation, like I fear you don't want to hear what I've got to say, so I amp it up a couple decibels. Or I fear you don't want to hear what I've got to say, so I talk in this language that doesn't make any sense because I'm so triggered when I'm talking. So we put all that out, John and I, in the first book, in an attempt to help people accept that there's nothing shamefully wrong about getting triggered. But, I've worked with a lot of people since then who've worked with the material in that book, and there's still a lot of, oh, I shouldn't get triggered. I'm bad or wrong if I get triggered. So I wanted to write another book about it that was more talking to the individual, more of an I-thou conversation with people. And the longest chapter in the book, which we didn't deal with in the other book, the longest chapter is the chapter about how to accept that it's pretty damn normal to sometimes get activated. But also the second piece that people didn't quite get from the other book was trigger reactions are mostly internal and nobody ever sees them. They're mostly, like I alluded to a minute ago, I asked for what I wanted. The person didn't give me a response that I wanted, so I'll stop asking. See, that's a trigger response. And so people are when we say trigger reactions, people are often looking for something big and dramatic. In fact, this book has been #1 on Amazon under anger management. And I want to go, so much of what we think of as anger management is for people who act out their anger, But most of us, or most of the people who come to me in the Getting Real work, aren't act outers. They're people who suppress their true self-expression out of some kind of fear that it will lead to, well, it'll activate fears like I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted, I'm not valued, my voice doesn't matter. And again, these little sentences that I just said, these don't come to consciousness. People don't go around after their partner doesn't give them the appropriate response. They don't go around and say, oh, that's my fear that my voice doesn't matter. They don't go around thinking those phrases because they haven't done enough of the inner inquiry to realize that that core belief, that core fear is down there somewhere based on some early unfortunate learning when one of your core needs as a very small person wasn't met. So I wrote this next book to get at more the subtle aspects of triggering. The 5-minute relationship repair deals with the obvious stuff. This deals with the more subtle things. And so I'm just going to pause now and just see if there's any comments or questions at this point from anybody. I want to see who's here too. Get myself a chance to just look around.
All right, Susan.
Yeah. Hi, Dexter.
So what I understood you to say is that most triggers don't come out as anger. They're suppressed. And is that right?
The ones that I'm most interested in helping people see don't come out as overt yelling and slamming doors. Yes. Yeah. I don't know about most trigger reactions because, you know, I'm not in everybody's bedroom or in everybody's kitchen. But yeah, I'll just say the ones that I want you guys, my people, to be onto in yourself. It's pretty easy to go, oh, I labeled you a cold fish. I was triggered. You know, when you label somebody, so maybe it's not for some of us. You know, maybe you don't realize when you throw out pejorative labels, that's a sign you're triggered. But that's more overt anger that's obvious. I'm wanting to help people, okay, beyond knowing that when you call somebody a cold fish or whatever else name you want to call them, beyond that, there's the secret judgment is more what I'm interested in helping people unearth and get witness to, the secret judgment. And it's more like, I don't matter to this person. They don't value me. When you accuse somebody of something like cold fish, or you have that in your thought, what we do is start with that label and that experience of judging somebody else. We start with that, and then the feeling of that. So I'll invite you guys right now into a trigger inquiry. Think of a time when you had some kind of judgment or, let's say, debate with how another person, I mean, you know, this internal, I didn't like how that person said something. Why didn't they say it this way? When you had or somebody treated you in a way that you wouldn't treat another person. So just see if you can come up with anything like that. Because that's usually a good sign that there's something important here about your own inner world, that if we shine some light on it, you're going to know yourself better. So I'll give you a minute to just think about, is there any kind of thing where you had an objection to how another person related to you? And if it helps, you could close your eyes, but you don't need to, because I am going to be guiding you into bringing back that scenario, bring back the scenario of somebody said or did something or didn't say or do something. You know, there was something out there, we call that the triggering stimulus. And that then felt lousy inside you in some way. You didn't like it. Maybe it hurt. Maybe it angered you. Or maybe you just said, what the heck? What's this? Why this? Any of that is evidence that you've been triggered. Sam, do you have a question?
No, I'm just relating to that question you just posed. Yesterday, I contacted a friend of mine. We were supposed to get together on Thursday, a week from last week. And the friend says, well, it's texting back and forth. Well, how about Saturday? I said, Saturday, I'm seeing my family. How about Sunday? Oh, well, how about... Anyway, it ended up that we can only meet on the 17th. So after that, I said thanks. And I was wondering whether I should just write the friend off and say, nah, that's not a good friend. When we met each other about a month and a half ago, and we only met twice. And that's not the kind of friend I'm looking for. So I felt a trigger, and I did the breathing, and I did the calm, and I do this new thing I call buy time. Just buy time, see if you feel the same way tomorrow morning. So I sleep on it. And so it worked very, very well. And so your book was very helpful. I want to add one thing that really worked for me and my son. We went to counseling with a Gottman therapist here in Vancouver, Washington. And we agreed on triggering. So now I can ask Alex, when I feel something in here, are you triggered? He asked me the same thing. And then we can check whether we are responding to what's happening right now or to something that happened in the past between dad and his son. So that's it. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's a nice, that last thing that Sam said, being able to have a relationship where you have a prior agreement, a conscious intent to surface when triggers are happening. So you have permission, you give each other permission to ask, are you triggered now? That's a good practice. And I do recommend that anybody who has a close relationship with another person, that they analyze their trigger signature. And so if we analyze, I'll just use Sam's example, your trigger signature is, well, actually you have to think of several different trigger incidents, but your trigger signature is, and some of you have, because I prompted you a minute ago, have thought of a situation. And I'll finish guiding you through that in a minute, but we can use, if you've thought of a situation. I was trying, so I'm being Sam now, trying to get a time to meet with this new friend. There seemed to be some inability for the friend to meet very soon, and the soonest was going to be September 17th, which is a ways away. So that's the trigger stimulus, is I'm hoping for some kind of connection. And I'm going to make a generalization about this. Like if I were Sam, it would be, this other person doesn't seem as eager to spend time with me as I am with them. And that discrepancy feels somehow uncomfortable or painful to me. So my trigger signature, if I were to analyze 5 different, because that's what I recommend in the book, 5 different times that I was somewhat upset, they might all have a similar flavor of me reaching out and not getting as much back, or me giving and the other person not acknowledging it. So there might be in my trigger signature some theme there. So I would suggest that each of you get the book, or on a future call, I might take you through the trigger signature exercise. But the basic idea is, what was the stimulus? What did I say to myself? Like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good friend. This is what Sam told us. Maybe I'll just move on. Maybe I don't want to invest in this friend. So that's what your mind does. I could ask you, Sam, what happened in your body, if you remember any kind of, and I won't ask you because I'm just trying to teach something so other people can kind of do it themselves now, but what happened in your body? If you're Sam, what would happen in your body when you hear this person? No, I can't do it then. Oh no, I can't do that day. Oh, but how about the 17th? Or how about after the 17th? You hear that. I think many of us have been in that situation. Some of us, it's not a sensitivity, it's not a sensitive area. For others of us, it is. So if that is a sensitive area, that's part of my trigger signature, having that discrepancy that I mentioned. Okay, so that body sensation might be feeling let down, feeling kind of a heaviness. Emotion might be disappointment, could be anger, could be just some kind of like almost like an emotional story of I'm not valued. So that again goes back to the value. I mean, that goes back to the reactive story. So we have a triggering stimulus, we have what goes on in the mind, what goes in the body, and what goes on in your emotional world, which is sort of like fear that I'm not good enough, fear that I'm being rejected. That's kind of the emotional tone. So once we do that kind of analysis, the incident and what happened in my mind, body, and emotions with 5 different incidents, then we know what our trigger signature is. And like Sam and his son did, we can communicate that to each other. We can say, here's some things that I know about my trigger signature. So if I'm doing this, if you see evidence of any of this, you can ask me if I'm triggered. And if I see any evidence of this, I will report I'm triggered or I'm starting to get triggered. Of course, the sooner you can catch it. So the words I'm starting to get triggered, those are more desirable than I've been triggered for 5 minutes and I haven't known it. And everything that's come out of my mouth has been nonsense, like not really making good sense based on the present, you and me here and now, because it's got projection from past pain coming into it. So Sam and his son could share what their trigger signatures are as part of that agreement, along with what they've already got. It's a good agreement already, but there's more depth that you could go into if you wanted to. Now I was going to take you through that other exercise, but I want to pause here and see if there's any comments or questions before I go on. Karen, unmute yourself.
I wanted to say that what jumped out at me is the neurobiology part about the brain and the amygdala, and how important it's been for me to realize how my brain developed in a situation that was really, truly not safe.
Yeah.
Like it was physically not safe. And so here we have a brain who its job, this part of the brain, is like scanning for safety like many, many, many times a second. But then I lived in an environment where that part of my brain had to be on like all the time
Yes.
because I knew I wasn't safe, right? So, man, the neurobiology part has been so helpful for me to understand
I'd like-
why
yeah.
brain, because my brain's having a response to the triggers, right? Like I have some sense that I'm not safe.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel safe. Red alert.
Yeah, and you
So-
bring that into your adult relationships and you're pretty much
Totally.
on high alert all the time.
All the time.
So as a little facial expression or tone of voice that correlates with danger in your early
Yes.
world will set you off, and you'll see a forest fire when it's really a match, that type of thing. And
Yeah.
that's not, and that doesn't make you bad or wrong or unhealthy. The thing
No, and I
really important to just know that all of our nervous systems developed, and partly in response, I mean, because your nervous system's still developing after you come out of the womb, it's those brain connections between the prefrontal cortex and the more survival oriented reptilian part of the brain. Those brain connections are still developing for the first 3 months at least after birth. So what happens during those 3 months? And most of us really can't remember that. But we know if we had an anxious parent or a disorganized parent, that the infant 1 to 3 months probably didn't have a really safe holding environment. And you can only guess what that might have been like for the infant. But what's going on here is, if you have a very safe holding environment where when you cry, you're picked up and held, and where there's kind of calmness when you're being held versus anxiety and that sort of thing. When there's a safe holding environment, then it's conducive to a strong neural connection between the part of your brain that can say to your adult self later on, or your 5-year-old self, wait, slow down your instinctive flight or fight reaction. Slow that down. Take a look around. Is there real danger? Of course, when in the childhood that Karen's talking about, there was real danger. And it was necessary to be on high alert and to get out of the way of that other person sometimes, or those other people.
Yeah.
To just go away and hide, or to go away by dissociating. And these actually allow better neural development. When you get out of the line of fire, as a child, you learn how to do that. I hear stories of people like, when your parents are fighting, you went in your room and you hid. No, you found a safe place.
Exactly.
The little beings are very resourceful in certain ways.
Yeah.
But the point of knowing about neural development is your connections, even though that neural connection between the prefrontal cortex that can reassure the being, you're safe, you don't have to run and hide, because that's what we need mostly in our adult relationships, is there is no survival threat, and there is no even real threat to our being.
Exactly.
It is a threat to our feeling safe, emotionally safe, and we do have to still honor that by learning how to pause when there's something going on that triggers us, to ask for a pause from the other person, to say, I'm starting to get triggered. I need to go and calm myself, or I need to take a break, or I need a moment here to connect. And then I'll give you an answer to what you said. But we need, if we in adult relationships, if we understand that there is a way to slow things down by some breath practices that I teach in the book, some self-inquiry practices that are all done in a safe witnessing environment, because you're doing them by yourself, but some of the practices teach you how to create a safe holding environment for yourself so that your feelings can be felt and attended to. What you're really doing there is reparenting yourself, and you're giving yourself the conditions to build that neural connection that didn't happen in the first 3 months. You really are going back and reparenting yourself. And so that there's stronger neural connections. They have this now that you can still strengthen your brain wiring throughout your life. Isn't that great?
Yes. Because also I just wanted to say that, that extreme sensitivity to one's environment and the bad of an eyelash and the whatever, it can also be a really great tool. If you have the ability to just go, wait a second, this isn't red flag danger, but it's like super useful when you're out and you're like, for instance, I hike by myself. And I have extreme awareness of what I'm doing and where I'm putting my foot down, because I know if I fall and break my ankle, I might be there for a while.
Good,
right?
good.
So
I'm thinking some of the best therapists and group facilitators have worked they learned to be on high alert as children, okay, because it was unsafe in their environment. They've now worked with these tools enough to slow everything down. And so they still have that wonderful acuity, like you're talking to, especially group facilitation, it's very complex. You're talking to a whole group of people who have had distressing childhoods can pick up distress in the room better than somebody with a relatively secure childhood like myself. So, I went into this field to learn to be more aware of these little distressing signals in my field, because I was more the type of person, kind of innately, if I just followed my own instincts and didn't become a therapist, I was the kind of person that wouldn't notice if somebody, teased me with anger or with an insulting tone of voice. I would just assume they were just teasing me from a good-natured place.
yeah,
I wouldn't pick up the bad vibes. And,
right.
And it's, like you said, you go hiking by yourself, maybe there is some bad vibes you need to be.
Yeah, I totally think that.
Yeah. So I'm not the type of person innately who is attuned to like bad vibes coming at me. I just was oblivious to that until I became a therapist. But I've been a therapist for 55 years, so I've had a lot of time to train myself to realize that there's a lot of subtle. This is why I do the work that I do about triggers. There's a lot of subtle communications that are coming at you, that it's actually a richer life to pick up on those and see if you can deal with those, because I'm always about expanding my potential. So I want to be able to deal with as much of life as I can learn to deal with.
Yeah. And thank Goddess for neuroplasticity, because it makes me feel hopeful that I can reprogram, I can make new pathways in my brain so that it'll work in a different way, because I'm self-soothing and I'm reparenting and I'm doing the stuff that's helping my brain form in a different way. And I love that they are proving that neuroplasticity is a real thing, that we can literally create those new kinds of pathways in our brain. Feels so good to my heart of hearts, actually. So anyways.
And when in my subtitle, Heal Childhood Wounds, what I'm really talking about here is when you do this inquiry, starting with remembering a triggering incident and then following your feelings and sensations and just seeing where they lead. they will often lead to remembering incidents from your childhood that help you realize that parts of yourself were repressed, feelings that you didn't feel safe to feel when you were little were repressed, so you don't have access to that aspect of life or that aspect of yourself. But by getting triggered and following where that leads, you remember things or you connect with parts of yourself that were denied and repressed, and you bring those back into your wholeness. So you really do feel more confident in life because there's more of you. You're more all here. See, so many of us were taught, I mean, not taught exactly, but we learned the wrong thing. We learned to cut off appropriate anger. We learned to cut off challenging anybody in authority. We learn to cut off disagreeing. We need to learn to cut off what seemed to have our caregivers be unhappy. So the biggest thing that we learned to cut off was access to normal, emotional, painful feelings. It became scary and almost like forbidden for a lot of us to allow ourselves to truly just feel emotional pain, the kind that makes you cry and want to be held and that sort of thing. We cut that off. And the reason that a lot of us cut that off was because we're little. Remember, when you're little, you're in a world dominated by big people and you depend on these people. So you're very vigilant about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to these big people. And like reverse that back to when you're really little, like an infant, because we don't remember our infancy. But when an infant is fussing and crying, it does cause a lot of parents to feel anxious, like, oh, what do I do now? Gee, they won't stop crying. Or, you know, a lot of more enlightened parents will hold space for the crying infant and just be there with, and not try to put a pacifier in their mouth or distract them. See, you know, a lot of normal parents just try to help the kid get over it. You know, here's a pacifier or here's a toy. But the basic message, when you feel that your caregiver is uncomfortable with your pain, as a tiny little being, you get the message that if I'm in pain, there's something bad or wrong about me. And so I won't do it anymore. And that stuff gets repressed. So you then grow up hiding certain things about yourself that are painful or uncomfortable that you don't want to feel. When I say about yourself, I mean about any given interaction. You'll push down an unpleasant feeling and make it and make it like denied, or it didn't happen, or if it's really bad, then I'll do something, but it's not really that bad. Or maybe you'll amp up your feelings as a way to get attention or a way to act out, but it isn't like your genuine feeling, because that's what's been forbidden in a sense. So we're stunted. Most of us humans are stunted in our capacity to hold space for our own emotional pain. And see, emotional pain, discomfort, it just comes and goes. It's like any feeling, any thought. They come and go, and they need to be, like, if it's pain that's like genuinely from something that's upsetting, it needs to be felt like when you're little, felt and processed. And, you know, the term cry yourself out, it doesn't take that long. If you're in a safe holding environment, it doesn't take that long for the infant to just cry a little bit, and they feel the warmth of the adult's arms around them. And the adult is basically saying, you're okay if you're upset. I'm here with you. You're not alone. There's nothing wrong. I mean, they're not saying these words, but it's transmitting to you. There's nothing wrong with you when you're upset. And see, then upsets come and go more quickly. They get processed. They don't get held and repressed. So we got a big reparenting job to do here for ourselves, because we do have so much repressed stuff in us, which trigger reactions in adult relationships to the rescue. Trigger reactions in adult relationships are the opportunity to find your way back to those repressed and suppressed and denied parts of yourself. So this whole work is about becoming more whole as a human. And it actually teaches you about the whole process of becoming whole by attending to weaker or more undesirable parts of the self. You become a more resilient, strong person who can handle more of life. See, that's the whole point of all of this, is you can be confident and capable in more different situations that life throws at you. And boy, are we being challenged now about that. So I'll pause again for a comment if there are any questions. And then I'll go on a little more with the inner inquiry.
Change the vote.
Somebody said something, but I didn't hear what you said. Maybe they were saying it to somebody else.
Well, I have a situation, but I'm wondering whether that would serve what you're up to here.
Well, I was going to take everybody through an inquiry. So here's what I would like you to do, Dex, is think of your situation that triggered you, because that's what I've kind of asked people to do. Think of a situation that, no, start with a triggering stimulus. So let's go back to that. And Dex, then I'll walk through it with you once everybody else has done it too, okay? We can use your inquiry. So think of a triggering event. Who did what and said what, and what you noticed in your body. And so let's really begin to breathe more fully here. So that would be the first thing for you, Dex. It's just, you've thought of the incident. Now we're just going to breathe more fully, kind of trusting that we're going to learn something here today about ourselves. But there may be a little bit of activation that comes up in our nervous system. So we want to hold space for that. We want to be able to breathe fully and deeply, because it's important to kind of simulate in yourself that good mother archetype that holds a loving space for whatever arises. Notice your breath getting slower and fuller. And it helps to breathe just through the nose if you can. That's the kind of breathing that activates the vagus nerve that can send calming impulses throughout your body. Focus particularly on the exhale. That's the relaxing part of the breath, the calming part of the breath. And now bring in a little more of the memory of that triggering incident and what either you felt, what you thought, or what you sensed in your body, whichever pops in first. Just notice that. And like what Sam shared with us, a thought of maybe I will not invest too much in this new friendship. Thoughts like that is what we're looking for. Or why did this person do that? Body sensations. We're looking for things like tension anywhere in the body. That pit in your stomach, the way people call it, a pit in my stomach. It's just some heavy falling feeling. That's a sensation that's common when you're triggered. Or the impulse to hide or disappear. Maybe there's an activation in the arms and hands, sort of an aggressive kind of impulse there. You want to do something. There's a forward movement. So just notice these different ways you can observe your own body reaction. And maybe there's a hurt feeling or an angry feeling or a sad feeling or a hopeless feeling. Just notice. But somewhere in there, under that, there's going to be a fear. You might not be aware of the fear feeling. So as you become aware of these different impulses now or thoughts, tune in to what shows up first. Which is one of those things is going to show up stronger. And be with that as a mother would be with a much loved child. Just let that part of yourself be in the space. And by you breathing and creating a spacious presence, you're a holding environment for whatever that uncomfortable aspect of yourself is right now. It's like this is a tender part of you. So you're just holding, and we're just talking about the immediate reaction to the incident, the adult incident in an adult relationship. And as you sit with that, just see if anything else occurs, any associations, any changes in your body sensations, changes in where your attention goes. Sometimes the experience of being triggered as an adult here, this one we're tending to now, mimics something that happened when you were younger. And if that's there or if that's ready to be noticed, just allow that to come up. There might be a series of incidents that are similar, like if your issue has to do with rejection. If you gave it space, your attention could go to rejections when you're in your 20s, when you're in your teens. Eventually, you might get back to something that happened very young. So just continuing to notice what's actually going on. I'm suggesting a few things, but I'll be silent for a minute now. Just see if any memories or associations. When I say associations, I mean, it's sort of like I'm driving in a car, I'm the passenger and there's no driver. I mean, it could be associations that are like metaphors. So just see what comes. We're really just getting to know our own subconscious mind right now. And if an early association or memory occurs, see if you can give that younger version of you some empathy, some loving attention, as if now this younger part of you is that much loved child. And in a sense, you're communicating to this younger version that whatever is going on inside of him or her or them, it's okay. You're okay feeling what you feel. So it's a kind of being with practice. Whatever's going on inside of you, there's a bigger part of you in this compassionate inquiry exercise that's holding the tender part. You're being with. So this part is no longer feeling like they are all alone and isolated from the rest of you. And some people find it natural to just put a hand on a part of your body or to even give yourself a little hug. That's just, some people find that comforting and natural. So if you feel an impulse to do that, go ahead. And we'll just take a few more deep breaths. And we're going to let this image go now, but we're kind of bringing this tender attitude toward whatever hurts inside. We're going to bring a tenderness with us, but we're coming back to our normal place of thinking and feeling and being with this group. But give yourself a little time to come back. Maybe stretch, move your body, look around. If you had your eyes closed, open them, but take your time coming back from this. And appreciate yourself for just being willing to give yourself a little attention for things that maybe you don't pay much attention to in your normal life. So see if you can consciously appreciate yourself. And let's, if you're ready, open your eyes, and then we'll know who's back. And if you're not, go ahead and stay in your own space for a while. And I wonder, Dexter, if you want to share what happened for you in this, and you don't need to, you might have changed your mind or have a different angle on this, but let me know, Dex.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Mm-hmm. Would you share with us what came up for you?
Yeah, there's this person in my life who she doesn't even need to do anything. I'm just so triggered by her. So anyway, what came up is when I noticed the trigger, what was on top was a kind of an armoring, like tension throughout my whole body, my torso, my arms, and I just want to keep a distance from her. I don't want to interact with her in any way, and anger is right there. And then when you brought that good mother presence, when I brought that up, I began to notice that I felt sadness, and when I just breathed into the anger and the armoring, sadness came up, and I realized that I just want to be appreciated and to be trusted and encouraged.
Just
Yeah.
feel that as you're speaking it again, because what I like to do, I'm doing this partly for other people. When you're talking about a sensitive memory or, I just want to be appreciated and encouraged. When you're talking about anything like that in a conversation, even a sensitive one like what we're having, allow yourself to feel the experience of having that want while you're speaking the words. So that's part of our practice here, is along with words, there's a deeper experience that we can be having if we slow down to allow it in. So you're doing that, right, Dex?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I love those words. I just want to be appreciated and encouraged,
Yeah, and trusted.
trusted.
And I noticed a hopelessness that I'll ever get that from her.
Mhm.
So I have no expectation that that would ever be possible.
Mhm.
It's up to me to really let myself have those, have the ease that I experience when I let myself go through this good mother experience. That, yeah, I'm guessing there's nothing more for me to do, or is just continually be in that place. And I'm imagining maybe she'd change as I changed. But
And were you able to connect with anything where you felt a similar feeling, I just want to be trusted, type of thought, feeling,
yeah,
earlier in your life?
yes, definitely with my mother. I can remember lots of things that I was told, but not really supported to express my own wisdom. I was like told,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
not encouraged to notice my own, my own internal wisdom.
Yeah. Yes. As you say that, let's just bring some more compassion, because I can feel something in my own body as I listen to you. And it just kind of makes me want to do this. I was not taught how to value my own inner wisdom, is a phrase that's ringing in mind. You didn't say those exact words, but that's the way it came into me. Yeah, so just feeling some tenderness for that boy. Mm. And that, knowing that boy is there right now, then you've given him permission to be noticed more often, and to be encouraged and trusted more often by you yourself, but also to be grieved with, perhaps. And now I'm taking people in a different direction, but some of the things we weren't encouraged or helped to develop, it's an opportunity to just feel some sadness for what I didn't get, that would have been nice if I would have had that. But now I'm here with that part of myself, and I can continue to grow myself. So a lot of our inner work, if that was my story, what Dex said, my inner work would be valuing my own inner voice more and putting that as a high priority in my life. And I imagine, Dex, that is part of how you're doing your adult life. just from what I know of you.
Mhm.
I'm going to open it up for some questions now. Thanks so much, Dex.
Thank you.
Hmm. Just any comments or questions at all that there, because we're going to close in the next few minutes. Sam.
Yeah, I have a question. When I went through this exercise and your analogy of being in a passenger seat and there's no driver in the car is very apropos. My question is this. I connect with my inner child, and the sad part is I cannot do anything about the situation. Even if, I visualize myself sitting in a driver's seat and my little self is sitting right next to me, still in a passenger seat. I still can't get to where my inner child wants to be or wants to go. What do you suggest I do when there's nothing I can do about it? I can be compassionate, but I really can't give him what he wants.
What does he want?
He wants, like Dexter said, appreciation and a loving, caring relationship. And I'm giving him that, but I cannot give him that kind of a external relationship. I'm doing the best to do that.
Well, I will say, I'll comment on that. You can't go back to your childhood and put a competent driver in the driver's seat. You can't do that because, I'm using this analogy now, and I may be a little off for your childhood, but let me just kind of answer your question in a more generic way. You cannot redo what happened in the parent-child relationship that you actually experienced, but you're coming to terms with that. You're owning that something was missing. You grieve that. That's what you can do. I mean, somebody dies, you can't do anything about it. You grieve it. You work with your feelings about it, whether it's, anger or helplessness or grief. Same thing with childhood needs not being met. Some of them just weren't met, but you can allow your child self to feel whatever they feel about it. And there's more work that you can do. You can talk, have conversations with different parts of yourself. I mean, this exercise is one exercise for self-inquiry, but sometimes you'll have an impulse to speak. So I'll each month when I do these free Zoom calls, we'll take different aspects of how to work with this childhood need not being met. But all you can do is relate to I'll call it the deficit or the unmet need with love, compassion, and tenderness. And the main thing is let yourself have whatever feelings you have about it. And it will then integrate into the rest of your personality. And there's lots of parts of your personality that are working fine. And when your deficient parts integrate into the rest of your personality by being owned, they don't feel so alone. I mean, I'm using metaphors here because the self, we're dividing up the self, trying to use labels and language, but it kind of works. It's like these parts of yourself are no longer all alone. They've joined the family of your total adult being. And life is about an integration process of all the different things that have ever happened to you. We cannot change them. And so if there's a part that wishes you could change the past, that needs to be integrated too. The part that protests. All the parts are okay when they become conscious. because becoming conscious means you're influenced by your more healthy parts. The deficient parts are, as I said, they're no longer alone. So,
Thank you.
it's a lifetime practice. The stuff that I'm talking about with you today, it's get used to the whole idea of life as a practice, and you will become whole by the time you die. Okay, I'm gonna close this now, but thank you so much for showing up today. I think I will do this again. I wasn't sure how I was gonna like this, but I liked it pretty well. So thanks for your attention, everyone, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Susan.
Bye. Nice to see your faces and some of your names that I know.
Bye, Susan. Thanks.
Bye.
Love you, Susan. Ciao.
Ciao.